Hi there, welcome to Falchion Archaeology. Now, you're actually in the back garden of my house, so it's kind of Martin Bacon Villas and backyard archaeology. It occurred to me over the weekend as I was working on Pat Castle 2, which is the second instalment of the investigation of the excavations at Dowentio, and it's an interesting one because it's the one where we came up with a skeleton which was completely unexpected. It occurred to me that not a lot of people necessarily know what a falchion is, even people who've signed up for Falchion Archaeology. Those who've been following it for a while on Falchion 4.9, they don't necessarily know what one is. So I thought, what best way do I actually have to show them what a falchion is? Well, quite simply, I'll show you. This is what a lot of people would call a falchion. Now, it's a broad-bladed, broad as in deep, bladed sword. These were prevalent from really, you're talking the 12th century onwards in some parts of Europe, later in other parts. It's a weapon which actually has a lot of mass directly behind the point at which it's expected to make contact with the target. That increases the actual pressure which will be put onto the cutting edge itself. You can see, in comparison to a hand-and-a-half sword, it's much, much shorter. However, it actually weighs more than this sword. So all of that mass is concentrated into a much, much smaller area. You can see how the balance differs. This long sword, with its very, very long blade, can overcome that not too easily, but the point of balance itself is around here, just in front of the quill. With this, the point of balance, even with this very, very, very large pommel at the end, is again only slightly further back than on that sword. That is because this pommel is very, very large and very, very heavy to counterbalance this. It has other features in common though. It carries the quill, which has a primary role of guarding the hand to make sure the blades don't slip down into your hand, a secondary use as a weapon, and a tertiary use as a means of dissipating kinetic energy during combat. However, I'm not being exactly 100% accurate with you at the moment because this is also a falchion. This is a later pattern, more common during the early 15th centuries. However, it does actually cut in the same way. The dynamic of the blade actually works along the same lines. More mass against the point where it's likely to make contact. So when you're actually hitting, you're bringing down as much on the opponent as you can. At the same time, this is also a falchion, 15th century style, with this very pronounced concave cut as opposed to the convex slopes we've seen on so far. Concentrating a lot of effort down onto this Dacian style spike here, very reminiscent of the falx that gave the Romans so much problem in Dacia. This is also a falchion. This is styled off the Conyers falchion. This is one of my reenactment ones, so obviously it's blunt. It is again very pronounced down to this very, very heavy area here with a cleaver style blade, giving you a great cleaver action as you go into flesh. And also this is a falchion. This is the kind seen later between the 15th, 16th and 17th centuries in Eastern Europe and appears to be a precursor of the sabre. At the same time, very long, very pronounced blade, good back blade on it. So this weapon again, even full-edged, is classified as a falchion. Now what happened is, we think that the falchion evolved into the sabre. It also evolved into things such as the Langmesser, which is so popular with people who fight along the Tollhofer styles. Tollhofer being the guy who actually produced a Fechtbook in 1467. So what I'm saying is, a falchion isn't a specific type of sword. It has to be remembered there was no uniformity of construction during the medieval period. There was very little, even when it came down to uniformity of measurement. The L was routinely used in England, but it was different in England than it was in Scotland, than it was in Ireland. That uniformity means there's no such a thing as standardisation. You will see certain things which look very, very similar, but they don't necessarily belong to the same manufacturer. They're probably all going to be made in lots of different areas, and occasionally you're going to come across things being modified, things that are actually also going to be modified by the addition of different sword furniture, such as the pommel or the quill. So they're actually quite difficult to date. They're also very, very difficult to actually specifically say exactly what kind is. So the word Falchion is an umbrella term for this kind of sword. And now I know what you're thinking. Do they work? One way to find out. Yeah, I think it's just safe to say that they're pretty effective. See you soon with Pat Castle 2. Bye.